Please be seated. We're in kind of an in-between time, just a little bit. It is still Christmas. Christmas lasts 12 days, and Epiphany isn't until January 6th. So you see the wise men, the wise guys, have almost arrived, but they're not quite there yet. And yet, all three readings for the gospel, we had a choice of 3 readings, and they all take place after or when the wise men get to the manger, or get to see Jesus, wherever that is. So we could have read from Luke's gospel about when Jesus was 12, and he went with his family to Jerusalem. You remember that story? And he stayed at the temple, and they went home and then realized he wasn't with them, and they were frantic. And I have a memory as a child being in church, and we read that reading. It was probably the second Sunday after Christmas, or second Sunday of Christmas. And then we also sang the beautiful hymn, Once in Royal David's City, in which the line appears, Christian children all should be mild, obedient, good as he. Yeah. And I thought, there he was. Not sure if that was obedient. So that we could have done that one, which is way past, right? Or we could have read about the Magi arriving, about how they went to see Herod first and alerted him to this new king, and then went and worshiped Jesus. And then because they were warned in a dream, remember, they went home a different way instead of going and telling Herod where the baby was. Or we could have picked this one, which we did, which also takes place right after that, right after the Magi leave. Then the next thing you know, Joseph is warned in a dream that he needs to take his family and leave. And it sounds like he didn't wait for morning. He woke up from his dream and he got them together and they packed up everything they had. Hopefully they remembered the gold and frankincense and myrrh in their packs, I don't know. And they made their way to Egypt. In the middle of the night, it probably took more than one night. I looked up how far is it from Bethlehem to Egypt, and I got some conflicting answers, but some of them said 400 miles. I don't know, even if it was 100 miles, that's a long way when you don't have a car to drive, right? So they were refugees, they fled, they took what they could, and they went to safety. And the thing is that this reading that we had, did you notice that it's Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 to 15, and then 19 to 23. So they left out 16, 17, and 18. And I kind of know why they did, because it's not pleasant to read out loud. And Joe's probably just as happy he didn't have to. But it's kind of implied, like we all know what happened, right? But what happened is that after Joseph and Mary escaped, Herod sent his men to Bethlehem to murder all of the boys who were 2 or under. A horrible, horrible thing. And the slaughter of the innocents, it's often called, the holy innocents. And that's the kind of unpleasant part of the story. And then it talks about how Joseph had another dream that told him that it was okay to come back. Herod had died. And then he had yet a third dream saying, actually go to Nazareth, because the new king isn't very friendly either. So go to Nazareth. So all of these take place kind of post-Christmas, but it is kind of still part of the Christmas story, I guess. Now, I noticed that when we did our pageant, we went so far as to get the wise men to the scene, right? And they came up the aisle, the three wise guys and the 3 camels, and they did their thing. And that's often part of the scene. It's part of our creche outside, those 3 kings. But we stop right there, right? We don't include the next part, the very next part. Can you imagine a manger scene that included a representation of the slaughter of the innocents? No, that would not be. And we don't, in the pageant, I think we don't want to scare the children, but actually we don't want to scare ourselves either, right? We don't want to even think about it. But here it is. So, a couple things. I wonder what Joseph felt like. I wonder, I often think of it as such a great thing that he got that warning and got to leave. But it had to be terrifying. It had to be kind of a nightmare to wake up and realize that your child is being hunted down and that you need to do what you can to rush and get out of Dodge immediately. I wonder what it felt like to be traveling in this way, to be refugees, to hope that another country would take them in. I wonder what it felt like to be homeless again. I wonder I wonder why weren't any of the other parents warned in a dream to save their children? That doesn't seem fair. I wonder, should I be paying more attention to my dreams? Maybe God has been trying to tell me something and I wake up and I've totally forgotten. And I wonder about this as part of the Christmas story. The carol that we just sang is probably not one of the better known. Unto us a boy is born. And I notice it's from the 15th century. And it includes a verse about this very event, which always seems a little odd to me, that you're singing in this kind of happy voice, all the little boys he killed. But that was part of the story. That's a 15th century. There's another carol that we think of as a Christmas carol. If you look it up, it will be called a Christmas carol. And it is from the 16th century, and I think it's much more familiar. It's called the Coventry Carol. It goes, "Lule, lule, thou little tiny child, my lule, lule." Right? And the thing is that is not the little tiny child we're singing about there. It's not Jesus. If you listen, the verse says, "Oh, sisters too, how may we do for to preserve this day, this poor youngling for whom we sing, bye bye lule, lule." And then it's even more apparent. In the next verse it says, "Herod the king, in his raging, charged he hath this day his men of might in his own sight, all young children to slay." That carol is not about baby Jesus in the manger. That carol is about those babies who were killed. And I often have been on this sort of campaign to say, it's not a Christmas carol. December 28 is the day that we remember the Holy Innocents. And so I'm like, it's near Christmas, it's only 3 days later, kind of how we often think of Good King Wenceslas as a Christmas carol, even though it has nothing to do with Christmas, but on the Feast of Stephen is December 26th, right? So I'm like, it's the Holy Innocents. It's not a Christmas carol. It's not talking about Jesus. And yet, now that I'm thinking about it, it kind of is. It kind of still is part of the Christmas story. It's a part that we would rather ignore, I think, because it is so horrific. But it is part of the story. And just as Mary and Joseph and Jesus escaped to Egypt is part of the story, so is those precious lives that were lost in that time. And in a way, I think it's not like it's never happened before that, right? We remember when Pharaoh decided to kill all of the Hebrew baby boys when they were born, and how the Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, in case you forgot their names, managed to save them and claimed that those Hebrew mothers were so sturdy, these babies came out before we could even get to them. And somehow baby Moses was spared by his inventive mother and by his sister. So there have been times in history when people of power have abused that power. And guess what? It still happens, right? How many children are casualties of war? How many children are victims of famine? It is still in our world today. So I think, in some ways, remembering that this is part of the Christmas story, that as hard as it is and as painful as it is, that can be a good thing to remember, a good thing to name and acknowledge. And just that, as peaceful and beautiful and beatific as Christmas is, and we think of the beautiful scene, and so many of the carols are just full of joy, as they should be, and wonder. God with us, Emmanuel, God coming to earth, God being one of us, is very much as much true in our darkest times as it is in our brightest and happiest times. That Christmas is a wonder, but it's also true that our lives are complicated, and there are difficult times. And God is there every bit as much as God is in the happy times. God is real and really with us. And I think there's great power in remembering that. So to read about this thing, and also I will say, last week Joe referred to the fact that the Episcopal Church alone on the first Sunday after Christmas reads the prologue from John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. All the other churches that use the Common Lectionary, last Sunday, they read this reading. And they did not skip those middle verses. So on a year when Christmas is a Friday or Saturday, and then you come right back to church, and the next thing you hear is this story, that's kind of real. And I think there's power in acknowledging all of that. And not excusing it, and not saying, well, despots have always been abusing their power, but to do what we can to bring peace, to mitigate the harm. So, Merry Christmas, all of it, and to celebrate and to acknowledge and to give thanks that God with us, Emmanuel, is with us in every way, in every place. Amen.
Amen.